Off the show by talking about something very serious, and that is safety in Minneapolis. Crime seems to be on the rise. I live in Minneapolis. I hear things, I see things, I smell things. We're going to get into it. I want to hear from you. 651-989-9226. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? I was, however, a bit comforted earlier in the week, around November 10th, I believe it was, when I saw a Twitter clip and listened to it of Chief Mandaria Arradondo finally challenging the Minneapolis City Council, which seems a little out of touch with its citizenry, to support funding for police and safety. That's really ultimately what that means, public safety. Let's take a listen to what he had to say on November 10th.
I've got almost 500 people who've been shot and wounded in this city. We can go back and forth on the 185 million, but that is not stopping the bloodshed that is occurring every day in our city. And so we can go back and forth on this, but every day that we go back and forth on this, people are dying in our city. And so I'm asking the council to look within themselves. We can have this conversation about both, and we can talk about reimagining policing. I'm talking about what is necessary today in this city, and we need extra resources. And so I know that $185 million budget, Director McPherson, our finance director, is on the line now. I know that at least 90% of that is salaries, wages, and benefits. So it's not like I'm sitting on a treasure chest of an exuberant of money that's not being utilized. This city is experiencing unprecedented crime. Councilmember Fletcher, if you have a suggestion of how to do it better, please let me know.
That is Chief Mandaria Arradondo speaking with the Minneapolis City Council earlier in the week. That clip was tweeted by the WCCO TV assignment desk manager. It caught my attention that night as I was just kind of looking through my Twitter feed, and I retweeted it and said, "Finally, Chief, I am so glad you were calling out the Minneapolis City Council." I requested the chief to come on. They said no. And so I turned to the Minneapolis Police Union, Officer Rich Walker, to get into this with us. Phone and text lines are open for him and for you to share your thoughts. We're already getting text, 651-989-9226. Officer Walker, I know you are on the Minneapolis Union Board. Thanks for joining me today. You were on with me earlier in the summer. I appreciate you joining us.
Not a problem, ma'am. Thanks for having me.
Well, so Officer Walker, tell us, like, you hear that sound. My guess is you heard more of it from the city council meeting and the chief speaking. What is he talking about? Is he saying that the city council is just not giving the police department enough money? Is that really the crux of the issue?
Yes. What our chief is saying, what Chief Rondo is saying, is that we need more resources. And what Chief Rondo is saying is not new. He's been saying this for years. He's asked for more cops for years, and nobody could predict what happened on Memorial Day, which is something that the council members like to keep going back to with the tragic event of Mr. Floyd. They keep going back to that as a reason to not fund the police department. What about the other 500 shooting victims in our city? What about the other 75 homicide victims in our city? They're so focused on one incident and they're holding it against our police department. And yes, it feels like they're holding our ability to manage in safety the security of the city of Minneapolis. It's what Chief Rondo said he's been saying, and it's only getting worse. He's been saying it all year. He's saying it for multiple years. Please, we need more cops. We need more cops. We need more cops. And their disdain for our police department has never been more evident. They, at no cost, are these council members willing to help us. And until they change their mind on how things need to be run in the city, nothing is going to change. It doesn't matter who the chief is. It doesn't matter what administration is in there. And it doesn't matter what anybody feels until those 13 council members come together as a collective group and say, we've had enough with crime in this city. We're going to give our police department the men and women who actually make a difference with crime all the resources they need to combat it. And until they become one, this is just, I hate to say it, seems like it's just the beginning. It's not slowing down. We're up almost 200% in shooting victims and homicides compared to last year. It's only getting worse. And now they, I don't know. I believe it's fake anger coming from the council because it's when the crime started to rise in the spring and fall when we tried to get a lid on it, they purposely did nothing but withdraw finances from our police department, which strained it. They talk about they want more police, Roshini, in the community. They want more police that have contact with the community outside of 911 calls. But every action that they've done has restrained us from doing that. Now with the riots and with everything falling out, we're down almost 200 cops. That's almost 2 precincts worth of police officers. So yes, our resources are extremely low. Our chief is correct. We are bleeding. We're going call to call, and for the council members to say that they're not seeing the productivity, I think it's crazy insensitive to the families like yourself that live in the city and suggest that we're not working. Cops are going there every single day to work. Cops are losing vacation because they're being forced to work. It's just they need to start working with the police department and instead of against us. And when you do that, when they do that, they'll see it. We'll start to see a change of what's going on in that city.
Rich Walker is a member of the Minneapolis Police Union, and he is an officer of many years. He's decorated, and I like to deal, Officer Walker, in facts, not fiction and not fakeness. And I will be honest, I criticized the chief throughout the summer for his reactions and handling of things that last week in May, but I'm applauding him now for calling out the city council and for trying to get these funds for the officers, because ultimately, when you support officers, you are supporting safety in the city of Minneapolis. So let's just talk about the numbers. A city of the size of Minneapolis would normally have, close to 1,000 officers? Is that correct?
Our authorized strength for the year 2020, and which it has been for the last several years, is 888.
Okay, which you, the mayor, the chief is at, they've asked for more, but okay, 888. What are we at
when you look at the population size to similar cities like Milwaukee and Chicago, they have 1,200 officers. We have 800.
Right. So I would probably say we're between Chicago and Minneapolis or Milwaukee sizes. But yes, the point is already at 888, that's not a lot. And now we're into the 500s. Is that correct for number of officers?
No. Well, considering we had about, please forgive me, I'm just going rough off my head.
That's okay.
More than for me yet. We had about 30 leave this year for retirement, and some just quit to choose other career paths. We have probably roughly.
Well, I can't blame them. They're getting yelled at and attacked by citizens and mostly by their own council. I mean, I can't blame some of these officers.
I don't blame a single officer who left this police department. We've had other cops that left this police department to go to other police departments. But with the PTSD, Roshini, we had probably 130 cops that are on leave right now. So we're down to, if just on a rough, flat guess, I would say about 700.
Okay, so around 700, and it may be dropping. All right, so we have some calls and texts coming in for you. I'm talking with Officer Rich Walker. He is an officer. He's experienced the streets of Minneapolis. He is also on the police union board. Jan is calling from Coon Rapids. Hi there, Jan.
Good morning. I applaud every officer that exists for the job that they do. My son is also involved in the police department, and I say shame on anyone who is involved in giving funds to the police department and has the power to withhold funds. Shame on them. I was in South Minneapolis yesterday afternoon visiting a friend. I am from Coon Rapids, but I travel to Minneapolis 2-3 times a week. And as we were sitting playing cards yesterday afternoon, I looked at my watch. It was like 4 o'clock, and I said, I think I better go home before it gets dark, because I was afraid to be in Minneapolis after dark yesterday. And I've never felt like that before.
And that just shouldn't be, Jan. That just shouldn't be.
It should not be. And I support every policeman that exists for the job that they do. Like I said, they don't know when they go to work every day that they're going to make it home that night. And And shame on anyone who is involved in funding and calls for defunding of any police department, because these men and women put their life on the line. And it doesn't matter if it's a traffic stop or what it is. And domestic abuse calls are life-threatening to everyone involved. So,
yeah. Jan, we're gonna get to some of these texts that are coming in before we have to say goodbye to Officer Walker, and I want to get into that domestic abuse subject. We may have to do a completely different segment and show on that, Officer. All right, one person says,
I'm willing to stay as long as you need me, Roshini.
All right, get these brave men and women the support they deserve, says one listener. Hi, you have the best show on WCCO. Thank you. Please keep talking about public safety. It's important. What boggles the mind is that the city council seems to think they have any knowledge on the subject. That's frightening. P.S. Don't let the mayor off the hook. Officer Walker, let's talk about the mayor for a moment. What is the relationship like right now among police and the mayor? I mean, from what I can tell, the mayor usually is wanting funding for you all.
Yeah, I can tell you that he probably has a good relationship with our police administration. I would tell you for the men and women that I stand up for is that they've lost all faith in him as well.
And that is troubling. All right. So different people are asking about the officers themselves, because I think once we really start to think about the officers as other human beings, maybe we can tackle some of the challenges. So how do you and your union board members respond when people are talking about reform? Because I think there does need to be some reform, but maybe there's also misunderstanding that's happening in the community. And sometimes that misunderstanding is only fostered in a negative way by the city council.
Right. Well, I think first, Roshini, I'll start off with saying that I think a lot of people are misinformed about the union. A lot of people think we have more power than we actually do. We are a very important function for the men and women of the police department. We negotiate wages and salaries and contractual bargaining, and we just ensure that the discipline process is followed. We do not make decisions for the city, let alone the police department. And any part of the department that moves forward, contract negotiations or discipline, we just ask for a seat at the table. And we come up to an agreement with the administration in the city. So when things fall apart, they blame the union and the contract, but they fail to mention that they're also sitting at that table, and that is the time to make the changes that they think needs instead of sit back and point the finger. I think a lot of these guys just need to seriously look in the mirror and seriously consider that they're part of the problem. And until that happens, there will be no change. There will be no change in the city. It's only going to get worse. The criminals feel like they can do whatever they want. And I think it is important right now than ever to mention something that most people are not thinking about, Roshini. It's the fact that Minneapolis is failing its residents as a whole. Now, when I say that, it's the relationship between the council and the mayor and the police department, and the department towards the council and the mayor is broken. It's also the criminal justice system. The justice system is failing. We have about 5 to 10% of the people committing 90% of the crimes. They are letting people out. It's not that these people are not getting arrested. Everybody blames the cop when the crime rates are up. A lot of these guys are getting arrested. They're getting
Well, that's interesting. So these are career offenders that really give everyone a bad name, including the police.
Yes, and right now, I mean, it's a younger generation, but if they actually held people accountable, and it appears in a lot of times, and you cannot ask one Minneapolis cop that would disagree with what I'm saying. When these guys get arrested for stealing cars, they should do time. It don't matter if they're a juvenile or not. If they get arrested for armed carjackings or robberies or aggravated assault, they should be in jail. They shouldn't get home confinement. They shouldn't get supervised release. They shouldn't get anything but jail. They raise the taxes for the residents of Minneapolis for building stadiums, for fountains, for special sculptures. Why don't you use some of that tax money and build another facility to help rehabilitate and keep the criminals off the street? These people need to stay in jail. You arrest a guy who can get arrested 3 times in a week for felony charges, and he's right back out again. And
well, it's interesting you say that about the cars, because I have personally a very dear friend of mine. Her car was stolen right out of their garage and was found in another city. And due to the climate right now and race relations, the department that was conducting the case was very, I don't even think they did file charges against these 4 teenagers who clearly stole this car, and not only stole it, set it on fire. It's crazy to me.
In order to, and I've dealt with this personally, in order to get people charged with stealing or for being in the possession of a stolen car, the county says they have to know it's stolen. Well, they didn't buy it. It wasn't given to them by a family member. It's stolen. They look for every reason not to charge people, and that's part of the problem. And they get to skate under the radar, and they keep coming to work and letting people out of jail. And there's a lot of very good attorneys, so please don't take this as a slight to them. It's the system as a whole.
Right, and attorneys are there to also, public defenders are there to protect their clients too. They're doing their job.
Sure.
All right, well, Officer Rich Walker, we will have you back because we've gone over time, which is totally fine. This is an important topic. I'll return to some of these texts, folks, around 9:50, but we do have to take a break. Thank you so much, Officer Rich Walker. I want to have you back soon. He is on the Minneapolis Police Department's union board. He is also a real-life working police officer. Thank you for your service, and continue to push your officers to do well and to push city leadership to do well.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.